Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Meitlis.
Hi. Yeah.
Um, Welcome to this Feldenkrais uh, Guild newsletter interview and short Feldenkrais lesson.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Pleasure. And I just wanted to ask, where do you work and what do you specialize in?
Okay. Well, I work both in Sussex, where I live, and in London. And I've also worked in Warsaw and Germany, France. I think that's about it, really. So the reason I've worked in these exotic-ish places is because I specialize in working with opera singers, because my background is in opera. I was a director, not a singer. And while I was doing the Feldenkrais training, I did the training for myself. I didn't do it for a specific reason. And but I realized that if only I had known about it many years earlier, it could have helped a lot of young singers. So that's how I came to specialize with working with young singers after they've done their college work and often their postgraduate work.
So internationally, across Europe, in London and Sussex. Okay, great. What brought you to Feldenkrais? You kind of explained.
Well, well, no, well, I did. I remember one boyfriend saying to me I was a workshop junkie. So
Okay.
I tried everything, there was a workshop on Tai Chi or Aikido or, shiatsu, anything. I would just thought, well, I wonder what that is. And then I saw there was something called Feldenkrais, again at the Brighton Natural Health Centre, which I understand is where Maggie Burrows, who
Wow.
last time also
Yeah.
introduced it. And this time it was a workshop with Sabine Blackaby. And I just went out of curiosity, which of course is, I've since learned, a key element to understanding Feldenkrais. And at the end of the weekend, I found I was walking in a normal sort of way. Well, you might not think that's so extraordinary, but I had spent my life walking what's called homolaterally, which means my right leg and right arm would go together and my left, so I would sort of walk like that.
Okay.
And as a teenager, my mother would sort of say, really, Becky, you don't walk like that. You have to walk in alternately. And I would try. And within 3 steps, it had gone back again. So I worked out as a teenager that the best thing to do was not to move my arms at all. So from being a teenager to being in my 40s, when I first came to Feldenkrais, I just kept my arms by my side and nobody knew. But when I found this amazing connection between my pelvic girdle and my shoulder girdle, and that they could swing
Wow.
position, suddenly just walking became an amazing pleasure. So it was really a life-changing experience for me.
How fabulous. That's incredible. What is your favorite thing about the Feldenkrais method?
Well, I think it is about learning and changing our potential, what we think is possible in our lives. And
Wow.
that's what I find, in my own life, and when I find that in students, it's thrilling. And I think actually that's what I loved about doing opera as well. That sometimes people would experience opera, and it would change the way they felt about themselves and themselves in life. So that's been a sort of recurrent interest of mine and enthusiasm.
Thank you. And what's your favorite case study?
Right. Well, I mean, there's lots, as you know, and of things, day to day. But what really surprised me was this summer I went to a dress rehearsal performance of an opera. And sitting in the row in front of me was a pianist who I'd worked with in Warsaw. And I sort of said, "Oh, hello." And she turned around and looked at me. And I thought, oh, gosh, it's probably rather embarrassing meeting somebody who's sort of been your teacher, and there and she was with her fiance, and I thought, oh dear, dear. Anyway, she came up to me after the performance and she said, "I just wanted to tell you, you changed my life." I
Oh,
just thought, I was so astounded. And when I caught my breath, I said, "Do you mind telling me In what way? And she said, well, I learned to breathe. And because I learned through the work we did together about breathing, it helped my stress, and it meant I could perform, and I could perform and work with people and do what I really wanted to do in life.
So absolutely life-changing.
And it was life-changing. And that was many years later. That sort of makes a difference as well, that it's a lasting change. It's not just, last week I could do X, Y, or Z,
It's amazing how you don't always hear exactly. So you'd made this amazing difference to her life, but only because you bumped into her did you find out.
I know. But that was that day, it made me feel, yes, it's all worth it.
And can you give me a mini Feldenkrais lesson, please?
Oh, I'd love to. Well, I thought I'd do a very simple lesson. I'm sure you've done it, and maybe some of our listeners have done it already, in sitting. And it's a lesson that I do a lot with singers, and I do with pianists, and I do with everybody, actually, because it's finding your sitting bones.
Brilliant.
So shall we just go straight into it?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great. So just notice how you're sitting. And before we go into the lesson, I'm going to just say that I didn't even know we had sit bones before I did Feldenkrais. And I think a lot of people don't. And I remember going to a colleague's workshop. She's a drama director. And I heard her tell the group of postgraduate students, sit properly, sit upright on the base of your spine. And I thought, oh no, I was already a Feldenkrais teacher by then, but I didn't interrupt. But it's a misunderstanding that we have often, and also that almost all the chairs and seats that we sit in are not designed for us to sit on our sitting bones. So my dream is to work with a chair designer and create a chair that will work really well. So anyway, this lesson is about finding your sitting bones. So first of all, just notice how you're sitting, and you could even just slump. You could just slump in your chair, and notice what happens when notice what happens when you slump. And then come and sit comfortably, as comfortably as you can. And have your feet just a little bit apart and your knees just above your ankles. And great, that's lovely. And can you feel your sitting bones? Can you feel, is one of them feeling?
Yeah, one feels more prominent than the other.
Does it? Okay, well, let's start with that one. Which one is it, the right or the left?
The right.
Right, okay, good. So put your right hand underneath your right sitting bone. And, oh dear, I'm doing it as well. It's always a temptation. And you'll feel that sort of knobbly bone. It's a bit like a knuckle, like that, yeah?
Yeah.
And just very gently begin to rock a little bit forward and a little bit backward over that bone. Now, you could do it by rocking your whole body back and forth, like, yeah. Or you could, and I can't see your pelvis, but I'm sure you could find a way of just tilting your pelvis a little bit forward and a little bit back. And by moving your pelvis, just that small amount, you'll feel that you're moving over that sitting bone. Is that getting clear?
Yeah.
Great, good. Now, as you're doing that, just experiment with going a little bit further back and a little bit further forward. And when you go too far forward and too far back, you lose the bone. Do you feel that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you want to just stay on the bone.
Okay.
And that's something that we do often in Feldenkrais. We really focus on the bones. And I think that's so important because it's something that we don't often even think about, And just notice how you're breathing as you do this. So as you go forward, can you breathe easily over this movement? Maybe you feel there's one part of the movement when you want to let the air flow in, and maybe one part of the movement you want the air to flow out. So it's a very gentle, gentle movement. Good. And then next time you're somewhere in the center, very easily slide your hand away so that that sitting bone goes probably a little bit more into the chair. Is that what's happened?
Yeah.
And do you also feel a little bit wider on your right side?
Yeah.
Extraordinary, isn't it? Just where your pelvis is, or do you feel wider somewhere else?
All around. Yes, right. Yeah.
All the right. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Good. And then just slide that hand, the same hand underneath again. So it's the palm up, and you slide it under and you find that sitting bone again. And this time you're going to rock your pelvis just a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, so that you can feel the side to side sliding of the sitting bone over your hand. And you could just ask yourself, that's interesting. How wide is this sitting bone? I don't know if you know, but apparently all our sitting bones are incredibly different as our noses.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very unique to us. So nobody else knows how wide your sitting bone is. And also, it's a very beautifully shaped bone. So, different parts of it are wider and narrower, and it's an extraordinary, all the bones in our body, extraordinary. And again, as you're doing this movement to the left and to the right, you're doing it you're adjusting to that movement by letting your ribs come together on one side and coming away from each other on the other side. And then it changes. Can you feel that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is a wonderful way of just waking up the movement of those lower side ribs. So that's why this can be a really nice lesson to do on your own if you're just about to do something that's a little bit stressful, like a So often I suggest to singers that they do this not in a very sort of discreet way, maybe before they go on stage in their dressing room or otherwise. And anyway, gently slide that hand away, let that sitting bone settle. Woo! And it's even wider. Yeah.
I'm definitely taller on the right, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like everything's so spread. And I think that's something that's so fascinating with a lesson like this, is that it's organizing everything above, and in a moment we'll see what happens below. Maybe there's an effect as well that way. But I mean, it could be the lighting as well, but it looks to me like your face is wider.
Yeah, definitely. I think because I've been doing Feldenkrais so long, just a couple of movements and my whole side completely transformed.
Oh, yeah, brilliant.
Can we do the other side?
So slide that hand underneath again and find the same hand, same side, same sitting bone. Mm-hmm. This time you're going to do a sort of circle around that sitting bone. So just go in whichever direction comes to you first. It doesn't really matter. And you're looking to make that circling really smooth, really round. And there might be little bits where it's not as round as it could be. So you're thinking, oh yeah, that could go a bit more forward or a bit more back, whatever your normal habit is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then once you've done that a little bit, slide that hand away, let the sitting bone, and even wider. A massive difference in your shoulders.
Yeah,
your shoulders more broad and your left shoulder is all, wow. And now just one more, you slide that hand underneath again, same side, and you do the circling in the opposite direction. Okay. So if you weren't really sure, just do what comes spontaneously and then change the direction. And again, you might find that it's a little bit sticky or a little bit not so round in the same places, or it could be in different places. So be slow, be gentle, and just think smooth, round. Lovely. Good. Okay, and then slide that hand away and enjoy your sitting. And just notice how you feel in sitting. And I'm just going to suggest that you come and stand up for a minute before we do we will do the other side. And that's lovely. And in standing, do you notice a difference in the way you're standing on the right side and the left side?
I'm thinking of my shoulder, that my shoulder's changed a lot, but yeah, it's different on the right side and left side. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe the weight is a little bit more forward or more backward on one than the other.
Yeah.
And take a little walk around the room. So when we do sitting lessons, we rest by walking usually, or just sitting comfortably or whatever. Great. Yeah, I love these Zoom lessons when you did go off screen, and I often during the pandemic used to do a little hop, skip and a jump and a jig and think, nobody knows. It's great. Sit down. Good. So so what's really interesting about these periods of rest and integration is often the side that you've worked on first will teach the other side, which is why we can do these. Often the second side takes far less time. I mean, really far less time. And often I do it in the imagination, which is really useful for musicians because, they have to spend hours and hours and hours practicing. And if they develop this skill of having a kinesthetic imagination of how to do whatever it is,
wow,
it's a fantastic way of practicing without exhausting yourself. But we won't do it in our imagination, we'll do it in real life. But if you do it again, you could see what it's like doing one side in your imagination. So slide your left hand underneath your left buttock, good, and feel that sitting bone. And it might feel quite different, so be interested in how it's different from the other side. And I mean, initially we started on the side that was clearer, didn't we? So, there could be a reason why. So, just be interested to find out. And begin that gentle rocking a little bit forward and a little bit back. And doing the second side, you could really just play around with doing it really small, so that it's just that little over the tip and behind the tip and over the tip. And letting your breath be really even over the whole thing. And you might begin to notice that even though the movement is so small, the whole of your spine is responding. So when you rock forward, your spine becomes more erect and slightly arched. And when you roll back, your spine becomes a little bit rounder. And it's a wonderful way of just waking up all those little tiny, tiny connections throughout your spine, right up to your head. Great, good. And then slide your hand away and let your sitting bone settle. It's getting catching up. That's nice. And let your breath feel, gosh, by moving your spine, you've moved your ribs and you've just freed up your breath a little bit. Fantastic. And then slide that hand underneath again. So slide your left hand underneath your left sitting bone. And this time you're rocking a little bit side to side. And again, see how small you can make the movement. So you're really doing it by tilting the pelvis from side to side rather than swinging your whole torso. And again, let your breath be really free. And even doing that small movement, you'll notice that your ribs come together on one side and apart on the other, and then that exchanges. So you have a wonderful sense of folding side to side and unfolding and opening. Good, and then slide that hand away very gently and let that sitting bone settle where it wants. And really enjoy the way that you can feel the inhalation of your breath, feeling even more complete and more settled. And then slide your hand underneath again, left side, left hand. Good. And you're going to do a circle in whichever way is the one that comes first to you, around that knob. And really paying attention to where you could maybe let the circle be a bit rounder. And then you could just change the direction of that circling. But when you change, really notice what's the difference going in this direction to the other direction. And again, you're looking to making it very round and very easy, lovely. Great, and then come to the center, gently slide that hand away. Do you feel a little bit more balanced now?
A little bit, yeah. No, I am much more balanced. Thank you. I can really feel my feet on the floor.
Ah, that's interesting, isn't it? When you were doing the circling, could you feel that circling in your feet?
I wasn't particularly noticing it. I've just noticed now how much I'm feeling my feet.
Yeah, no, that's great. And also, because it's what's extraordinary is that when you do these little circlings, it goes all the way up and all the way down. It's really sort of like you've doing the whole of you. Great.
That's incredible. So you'd recommend that before any performance?
Oh,
of any
yes.
type? Yeah.
Well, any type. I mean, I when I was doing my Feldenkrais training, I was doing a sort of a high-powered sort of consultancy job and having to turn up to board meetings, which went on for hours and hours and hours. And I would sort of, after a little bit, when I felt tired, I would do this secretly, under the board table. I wouldn't necessarily always put my hand underneath, but when you've done it a lot, you can just feel that forward, back, side to side. And you can do it so small that nobody knows what you're doing. And so I would find myself getting bigger and bigger during the board meeting, And everyone else was getting smaller, more stressed, And I thought it was really interesting. It was really
That's incredible. That is so useful for all my clients. Thank you so much.
And you can do it on public transport, when you're going somewhere and you want to, arrive feeling fresh. Yeah, it's really useful. Well,
Thank
good.
you.
I mean, I'm sure all your clients will really enjoy doing it.
Thank you so much. And
Well,
people, please get in touch with Rebecca if you have any questions. Thank you. Bye.
bye.